Every one of you. Good afternoon and welcome to each and every one of you. We're going to get started in just a moment. We just opened up the bridge, so we want to allow for a little time for people to start to come on into the bridge and be ready to engage with us and spend this wonderful quality hour with us. So we'll just get started in about another minute or so. Welcome to each and every one of you. I hope that you have a moment to grab something to drink and get settled in. We're going to get started real soon. This meeting is being recorded, so I wanted to just make sure that you all know as you come in, you want to go on to mute, and then when we open it up for questions, we'll make sure that we can hear you in the bridge. All righty, we're going to get started. Welcome, each and every one of you. We want to thank you for joining us today for our Cyversity Bay Area Chapter event. We're so excited to have you. It is such a great day for us to really deep dive into Cybersecurity Month. So we have a great program set up for you, a wonderful speaker who's going to bring some great content and some wonderful experience. So we're going to get started. Before we jump in, my name is Rolanda Small. I'm the Global Inclusion and Diversity Leader at Palo Alto Networks. I'm also one of the leadership members here for the Bay Area Chapter of Cyversity. Just a quick moment, we want you to take a quick look at our mission and think about, what this means is how we're dedicated to improving, increasing the consistent representation of women and underrepresented minorities in the cybersecurity industry. We do this through our programs, through our mentorship, our recruitment, and just overall inclusion and retention. And this is what's going to make this overarching industry like no other tech industry. So please come on this journey with us. Let me first introduce our Bay Area Chapter leadership team to you. We have MK Palmore, myself, Hakeem Oseni, Olivia Hereford, and Monique Head. And each and every one of us are here and available to you if you need any questions answered or you need any guidance on anything that we might talk about today. Just reach out to any one of us and we'll lead you in the right direction. We also want to make sure that you know how we run our meetings and how we go about the themes and topics that we actually coordinate each and every time we come together. So lastly, you saw in May, we had Asian American and Pacific Islanders Month. In June, we had LGBT. And now here we are in October where we're celebrating cybersecurity awareness. And so this is really near and dear to each and every one of us. And so I think you're going to find the content very rich and very meaningful. Be looking for the other upcoming events in November and December as well. We also want to let you know that Cyversity, we really push all of our learning and education through our Engage series. This programming is set to, that's designed for us to grow, for each and every one of you as members to grow and develop and highlight your careers. We give opportunities and contributions of diverse talent within cybersecurity. And so this is meant to be highly engaging for each and every one of you. I also want to make sure that before I introduce our speaker for the hour, is that I give a shout out to our sponsor for this particular event, and that is BishopFox. They have been a sponsor for not only this event, but for the whole Bay Area chapter and the wonderful work that we're doing in support of our members here. So with that, I want to make sure that I give enough time for you all to hear all of the great stuff that Gavin Stroy is going to bring to us today. Gavin is the Senior Security Consultant and Security Researcher at BishopFox. With that, I turn it over to you, Gavin.
Absolutely. Thank you for that introduction. I'm going to go ahead and get my slides shared out. And we should be good there. Awesome. Yeah. So I'm going to set a timer because otherwise I will talk forever. I'm just really passionate about consulting and helping people who are looking at getting into the field. So now that that's set, first, I want to say thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak with you all. I'm very grateful for this opportunity to speak at the Bay Area Cyversity event today. I wish that when I first started out, I had a community and a group like this to kind of help push me through my career and kind of guide me and encourage me as I was trying to pursue cybersecurity myself. The way that I'm going to be presenting today is going to be a little different. I'm going to be telling a few stories while interweaving some knowledge nuggets in between. So this presentation, Greatest Hacks, Life as a Cybersecurity Consultant. Next slide. There we go. Cool. So my name is Gavin Stroy. I'm a managing security consultant at BishopFox. I have well over 10 years of experience as a professional consultant and working in the cybersecurity industry. I also run and manage the BishopFox internship program. So I get to work closely every day with people who are new to the industry. I work for BishopFox. BishopFox, we're the largest private professional firm focused on offensive security. So that's going to be hacking and pen testing. We help some of the world's leading organizations. So that's going to be like Fortune 100s, Fortune 10s. And basically we hire ethical hackers to break into stuff. So as a consultant, I'm a huge fan of the bottom line up front, or the bluff method. So if you get nothing else from this today, I want you to kind of take away these 4 things. So first, what is consulting? Consulting is basically the practice of helping organizations improve their cybersecurity posture. Why might I want to be a consultant? So things that I really like about consulting is that it rapidly accelerates your learning. So you learn a lot and you progress very quickly. You get exposed to many different technologies. You get a lot more responsibility and more agency. So you get to work on a project from start to finish instead of just a little piece. You get exposure to a lot of different technologies, and some consulting firms, you actually get to travel. So for a while I was traveling for a living and I really liked that. So what if I'm not an expert, right? And you'll see in some of my stories that I wasn't an expert in the particular area that I was consulting in. That's okay. You don't have to be. Nobody expects you to be. There's plenty of opportunities to learn, and there are many, many people that you can reach out to while you're performing your consulting engagements, which I'll also kind of touch on a bit. And then what if I'm not very technical? So there are people that I've talked to about consulting, and so they're kind of worried about this, like, oh my God, there's so many technologies. How do I keep track of everything? It's a lot, don't get me wrong, but even if you're not a technical person, there's more to consulting than just kind of what I'm going to be talking about, right? There's different types of compliance consulting. So you can do PCI compliance with QSA. You can do GRC, which is governance, risk, and compliance. You can even work for an MSS or managed security services firm, which actually is kind of like blue team for consulting. So companies will offload their logs and alerts to you, and then you help kind of keep track of that part of their security infrastructure. Over at BishopFox, we actually have a kind of MSS team. We call them CAS, Continuing Attack Surface Testing. And so these are the people who aren't necessarily doing what me as a consultant am doing, but it gives them an opportunity to kind of focus more on like the ops side of the house. Also, we need support staff, right? So we need project managers, engagement managers, scoping, sales, legal counsel, technical editors. So consulting is not just the hard technical skills. If you're interested in what I'm going to be talking about today, as far as like how consulting works and what makes it different from typical like in-house security team, this is an opportunity for you also to kind of get exposure to that. So with that, let's get started. So a little bit about me. I am biracial, and what a lot of people don't really get from sometimes my complexion, or usually it's the hair that gives it away. Being biracial and growing up like that is kind of interesting. So I didn't really feel like I belonged to either culture of my parents, right? So my dad was Black, my mom was white. And so I kind of felt like I was stuck somewhere in between the two. I didn't have like a solid ground. So out of that, it kind of caused me to be a bit of the quiet kid when I was growing up. So right now you're probably wondering like, well, if you were the quiet kid, like, why are you presenting in front of people? You seem fairly confident. How did you get to that? So I didn't start branching out until I was in college. There was actually a book that really helped me that I highly recommend for you. I'm not sponsored by them. I have no affiliation with them. I'm just a huge fan. But it's this book called Networking for People Who Hate Networking, a field guide to introverts, the overwhelmed and underconnected. And so through this book, one of the key lessons that I learned is that I am a think to talk person, which basically means if you put me in front of a group of people and just tell me to go, I'm going to freeze up, hands in pocket. I don't want to have that talk. But I know how a lot of interactions go. And so if I take the opportunity ahead of time to kind of document what I want to say, how I want to say it, where the interaction will likely go, some common questions that'll come up, then it gives me an opportunity to kind of hop in and prepare those answers so that when I am asked those questions or I do have those interactions, I know how to interact with people. And so from here, even in the beginning, I kind of started with like high level flowchart diagrams. It's just, you'll get there. You're human, work with what you have. So how I first started consulting was, it was actually right after college. I had graduated with a degree in network and telecommunications management. I was going the whole Cisco networking track. And from there, I went to a job fair. The job fair wasn't good, but another lesson from this book, I promised myself I was going to be there for so many hours. So I kind of started walking around, talking to people, and I saw this guy at a booth, and it said Insight on it. It was one of the recruiters there. And so he was just by himself. Nobody was coming up and approaching to him. And so I'm like, you know what, I got some time. Let me just talk to somebody, right? So I went up, struck a conversation. I was telling him, yeah, I just graduated. Here's what I was doing. I'm a little disappointed in this job fair. Didn't really have a lot of opportunities. And partway through that conversation, he brought something up. And he was like, hey, listen, so what I'm doing right now is I'm kind of pitching sales jobs. You're not a salesperson, no offense, but you sound like you would be a perfect fit for our consulting academy. I'm like, oh, what's that? He goes, well, we'll take you for a few months, we'll train you up a little bit, and then you'll be going out with some of our senior resources on consulting engagements. I'm like, oh, well, I mean, that sounds kind of cool, but I'm not an expert or any special in anything. He's like, no. You don't need to be an expert. The difference is going to be, instead of working for our networking team in-house, you're going to be doing the exact same thing, but working for our clients. I'm like, oh, well, that's kind of cool. So that's how I started consulting, is actually going to networking events like this. And you'll see this is kind of a common theme throughout my series of stories. So being a consultant, and it is a unique experience. So I have many stories, but one of the ones that I think will really kind of open your eyes as to like some of the benefits of consulting and why you might want to consider it as a career choice is later on in my career, I'd actually decided to take some time. I went to grad school. While I was in grad school, I would go to networking events like Cyversity, other local community events, things like that. And I got into communication with a company. I wasn't looking to work right away while I was in grad school, but after graduating, that's kind of what I was looking for. So it wasn't until my last semester of grad school that they actually approached me and they said, "Hey, Gavin, we know you're in the community. We have a part-time job for you that you might be interested in. It's going to be 20 hours a week, but we need somebody to do third-party risk assessments, and we need somebody with a little cloud experience." I'm like, "Oh, I don't know how to do that, and I don't really have a lot of cloud experience. I've heard of it, but I've never actually interacted with it." They're like, "Hey, don't worry. It's going to be okay. We actually have one of our seniors. They built out the process. We just need somebody to execute on it." I'm like, "Oh, that's kind of cool." So I hopped in with them and I was performing third-party risk assessments. Third-party risk assessments, just to kind of catch you up. Basically, if I'm a bank, right, and you're a company that I want to do business with, if I'm going to give you my client information or my customer information, I need to know that your security controls are just as good or close to my security controls. And so we built out the senior built out the third-party risk assessment pipeline, and then I was the one who was executing on it. So it was an interesting engagement simply because it wasn't the most exciting, but it definitely felt like kind of the Karate Kid wax on, wax off, where even though I wasn't doing technical work, I got to see by the end of the year, right, 250 different vendors and how they manage their security controls. So I looked at SOC 2 reports, I looked at pen test reports, policies and procedures, self-assessment questionnaires. And from that, partway through, I was actually being asked to help build out some of these same pipelines for some of our other clients. So as I was refining and understanding this process and going through and executing on it, by the end of the year, I more or less became an expert on third-party risk assessments, especially when it came to cloud, disaster recovery, and things that banks, financial institutions need to be able to manage in order to handle their third-party vendors that they're passing along customer PII. So out of that, we get to do some cool stuff. I'll say stuff. So this first picture here on the left is actually shortly after the end of that engagement, where I was presenting at our local ISACA chapter. Remember, this is a year before. I didn't know anything about third-party risk assessments. A year later, I got to see so many different things that I was actually talking to auditors. This is their day-to-day job about how other companies are performing third-party risk assessments, especially when it came to cloud, because that was a little less understood by risk assessors. And so this is me giving a presentation to my local chapter just from this 1 year of experience. The other thing that I like as far as the way that I pitch myself is, do you want somebody with 5 years of experience or somebody with 1 year of experience 5 times over? Because there is a difference. And so this is one of the things that I really like about consulting, is we get to kind of zoom out and tackle the wider industry issues instead of only focusing on our company. So say I work at company A and I get to work on like Java applications in AWS. And so I learn Java applications in AWS really, really well. But if I move over to company B and they're using Node and Azure, I need to start back up. But as a consultant, I get to work with Azure, AWS, Heroku, Java, Node, PHP, all sorts of different technologies. And so as somebody who works with all sorts of different technologies and seeing the best of the best and the worst of the worst when it comes to security controls and what other companies are doing, they come to us asking, "Hey, what do you see in the industry?" And that's kind of where this middle picture comes from. In here, it might be a little hard to see, but that's actually a drone, a large drone with a net chasing after a smaller drone. I wasn't involved in the first iteration of this project, but I was involved in some of the drone hacking later on. But basically, we had a couple of our customers over at BishopFox asking, "Hey, I'm concerned about drones. What can I do?" Right? I don't want somebody sniffing my Wi-Fi with a drone. I don't want somebody landing on my roof with a drone. I don't want somebody crossing my fences with a drone. Like, what are the countermeasures that are out there and how do they work? So what we got to do is actually kind of zoom out and invest some time in understanding all the different countermeasures. So this was actually featured in Wired. So we looked at drones with nets. We looked at like flashlight net guns. We were looking at, there's some technologies where they have like an IR receiver and it'll target a drone and then kind of get it to land safely. So we're looking at all sorts of different countermeasures. We got to evaluate that. And so now we have the opportunity to talk to all of our clients in order to kind of give those recommendations of like what works, what doesn't work. Here's why this might be best for your environment, given a number of constraints. And so if we had only done that for one company, right? Say I work at company A and that was our concern, then company B is going to have to redo all of the work. Company C is going to have to redo all of the work. So as a consultant, we get to zoom out and focus on the macro issues. The one here on the right is actually a presentation that we got to release a tool at Black Hat Arsenal. So one of the services we perform at BishopFox is external penetration testing. So there's tools that will allow you to go out and grab screenshots. So that'll be like Eyewitness or Go Witness. So it'll grab screenshots of websites. And that's a very useful tool because we might want to see if there's any sort of exposed administration panels, login pages that we might want to focus on. So it's great for maybe a dozen or a couple dozen screenshots, but once you start scaling up, it becomes harder and harder for an analyst to actually sit through and like look at all of them and prioritize targets based off of that. So the question we asked was, okay, so what if we had 1,000 screenshots that we wanted to prioritize? Maybe this is a massive company or a series of companies, and we want to look at their entire attack surface. So myself and the other person in this photo, Dan Petro, who's now actually in charge of our research department, we were on our own kind of playing around with AI and machine learning. I was working with it to try and understand how I can apply AI and machine learning to kind of augment our current cybersecurity capabilities, right, for the industry as a whole. There's something that's been talked about for many, many years called the cybersecurity skills gap, where we basically have a need for more cybersecurity professionals than we actually have. So what can we do to kind of help automate and augment some of this with AI machine learning? So for this, we actually created a tool called Eyeballer. What Eyeballer does is it will look at screenshots of different websites, and we had it separated out into 4 classes. So one of the classes is, does this have a login page, right? If it has a login page, maybe we want to do some sort of brute forcing or SQL injection on it. One of the more interesting ones is, does this website look old? Now, that's really hard to turn into some sort of script or a signature, maybe a regex. Like there's no regex for old looking website. But we know if a website looks old, it's likely to have some older vulnerabilities. And so that's something that we would want to prioritize. An example of something that we would want to stay away from is like custom 404 error pages. So if you go to websites like Amazon, there are some other like custom international websites where it'll return a 200 OK in the response, but you'll get a picture of like a cute cat or a dog saying like, hey, this is the wrong way, or page not found. Our Eyeballer tool, it can actually look at these things, and even if it doesn't say anywhere like 404 page not found, it can identify whether or not it's a custom error page. And so that's something that we would want to pull out of our prioritized list and kind of throw into the junk drawer so we can focus on the things that are really important. So as a consultant, we get to really zoom out and take a look at those things. And then, of course, just kind of going with the theme of networking, the way that I got my position at BishopFox is actually kind of funny. It was going to events like this, staying in my local community, a lot of tools and techniques that I learned from that book. And so by the time I got hired, they're like, oh, how'd you find out about us? I'm like, well, I know like half the people that work here. You guys are at a lot of events. And so a lot of networking opportunities, very helpful. So I have a few frequently asked questions that people usually bring up when I talk about consulting. And so I want to go through them real quick. So first question, what makes a good consultant? So we are already familiar with like the hard skills and the soft skills, right? You're going to need that in any sort of technical field or any sort of technical capacity. But the one that's really unique to consulting is your consulting skills. So this is being able to work with a client and kind of translate their needs and wants into actionable results. Sometimes they'll say one thing, but they mean another, and you need to be able to have that conversation with them. And that also requires you being able to kind of translate technical concepts into non-technical terms, because you'll be talking to people all over the scale. So you'll be talking to base level managers all the way up to C-suite executives at times. You need to be able to work independently and in a team. So oftentimes you'll be asked to perform an engagement by yourself. And so you need to be comfortable with that. Now, it's important to remember you're never alone. You always have people that you can reach out to, even if they're not on your same engagement. But you also need to be able to work on a team, right? We don't have a lot of room for rock stars who do really well by themselves, but kind of flounder when it comes to communication, working with other people, because you need to be able to do both. And then, of course, being a client advocate and a trusted advisor. So working with your clients to better understand their needs and to give them custom solutions for the constraints that they have, the environment they have, and what they're trying to accomplish. So the next big one is, do I need a certificate or a degree? So this one we get asked so many times, but here's my answer. While it depends on the company, well, it depends on the company, right? Consulting and cybersecurity in general, there's so much of a demand. It's more about what you can bring to the table than what you have on your resume. Now, don't get me wrong, we do gravitate towards people who have certificates and have degrees, because what that shows is a drive and a level of knowledge, but it's not a 100% requirement. We also like to see that you're involved in capture the flag events or cybersecurity events. Maybe you've given some presentations or you've been published in magazines. And I highly recommend, if you get the chance, like, give presentations. It's a great resume booster to just kind of show that you're active in the community and that you have a vested interest in being in this industry and in this field. And of course, that you're somewhat of a subject matter expert in your little niche of the world. Is consulting right for me? So I want to be upfront, right? There's a list of pros and cons. I would say kind of the top of both lists is the travel. Now with COVID, this may change, but pre-COVID travel, you would be looking at probably about 25 to 50%, depending on the firm. There's been some companies I've been with that have had zero travel or just local travel. There's been others where I would be gone every other week. And so usually you can work with the company. If you have some sort of obligation that you need to stay at home, things that are keeping you here, you can usually work with your company. But it's definitely something I want to put on the list and kind of bring your attention to. This is a high demand field, but with that, one of the things that I kind of want to normalize the conversation around is burnout and imposter syndrome, especially when consulting, because oftentimes we are the experts going into our client environments. And so you will feel stressed, you will feel maybe like you don't belong. Don't get me wrong, there are days where I feel like it's only a matter of time before people realize I'm just two kids stacked on top of each other in a trench coat and I have no idea what I'm doing. But listen, some advice that really helped me is that you need to remember you made it this far, and that you're never alone. So if you are stuck or you do need to reach out to help or for help, you have those opportunities available for you. You're not alone. And for burnout, work with your team. A lot of consulting firms, BishopFox especially, we acknowledge and understand like this is a thing that happens. And so you need to find ways to set those healthy boundaries and then have other people hold you to that, or have them let them know that you're dealing with some stuff or you're kind of struggling. And so they'll be able to kind of take some stuff off your plate. So again, you're never alone. And then of course you get to work with other experts in the field. So there are times where I've had to reach out to people and say, hey, I'm not very familiar with cloud penetration testing, but the client's asking for these things. What are some resources I can look into, or can you help me out? And we'll hop on a screen share for a couple hours and we'll talk about it and kind of work with that. Uh, and then the last one is, what if I make a mistake, right? So this is the last little bit, and I kind of want to end it with an embarrassing story about myself. So you will make mistakes. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. It's just, you're human. Don't stress out about it. Making mistakes is not bad. It's okay to make mistakes. It's just, we also need to use those as learning opportunities. So I'll give you my embarrassing story. So many years ago at a different company, I'm not going to tell you who, I'm not going to tell you when, but I was working for a client who's a food processing plant, one of the largest in the States, and I accidentally knocked out their internet for a couple of hours. And lo and behold, they also had voice over IP, so it knocked out their phone system as well. So at the end of it, I had to hop on a call with my project manager, my manager, the client point of contact, his manager, and his VP in order to kind of explain like what happened. So I was sweating bullets at the time. By the end of it, I talked to the point of contact and he said, hey, listen, I heard you knocked out our internet. If it's any consolation, it's one of the largest plants we have in the country. So welcome to the project. Stuff like this happens, but just make sure it doesn't happen again. So we're all in this together. So yeah, that's what I have for you all. We have a short Q&A section after this, but if you're interested in working in consulting or working with BishopFox, reach out to Caitlin O'Neill. I have her email here. She's one of our recruiters. So koneal@bishopfox.com. If you want to network with me, and I encourage networking, I have my LinkedIn here to make it easier. It's a tiny URL, capital B, capital F, and capital G, Gavin. If you're interested in pen testing, we also have a pen testing resource guide. As somebody who runs the internship program at BishopFox, this is one of the places that I point them to kind of get them up to speed on some of our service lines in order to hop onto billable work and start doing some things for our clients. And then of course, the book recommendation that I brought up earlier is Networking for People Who Hate Networking. Again, not sponsored, not affiliated. I'm just a huge fan and highly recommend it for everybody. So that's all I have for you guys. I appreciate your time and attention. And yeah, let's hop over to the Q&A section.
Awesome. Gavin, I think you could probably hear the virtual applause coming from everywhere. That was amazing.
Thank you. Thank you.
Great. Awesome. Love the relationship with BishopFox and appreciate you coming in. Hey, I'm going to tee up about 10 minutes of Q&A. I have a couple of questions myself. I was fortunate enough to share some time with Gavin off stage a couple of weeks ago to sort of tee up for this meeting. And there are some aspects of his background that I want to tease out for the audience. But I also want folks who are on the line here to continue to drop questions in the chat. We want to make sure that we get your questions answered. And if for some reason we're missing you, one of the reasons we keep these meetings open is so folks can engage in dialogue. So just take yourself off mute at an appropriate time if somehow we miss your question. So Gavin, first of all, you shared with me an interesting story around your break into the security industry, literally how you got started. I thought it was super interesting in terms of attending conferences. Can you go back for the audience and talk in a little bit more detail about what it was like starting from fresh or zero in terms of showing interest in the security industry and ultimately how that break evolved for you?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question. When I was trying to hop into the cybersecurity industry, there weren't really a lot of communities like Cyversity and some of the other ones that I was part of, like 2600. They were around, but it was kind of more of a fledgling group. So there weren't a lot of resources, right? A lot of formal resources. So it was a lot of kind of trial by fire. You learn as you do. And then eventually, if you get good enough, you can hop into that field. If I had to start over again, what I would do is attend conferences. So I would go to local conferences here in Phoenix. We have one called CactusCon. We also have local security groups. So you have DC or DEF CON groups. So we have DC 480, DC 602. Also attend larger conferences like DEF CON. I highly recommend going to DEF CON. It's great for networking. It's great for getting experience. Again, I need to keep myself limited because I will talk forever, but basically the first time I went to DEF CON, it had been several years before I actually worked up the courage to go by myself. And when I did that, I was actually trying to do kind of a video blog as I was doing it. And by the end of the first day, this wasn't even the first day of DEF CON, this was the night before, I was just completely fried from the number of people I was talking to and the number of things that I didn't even realize. I thought I knew computers, but it turns out RAM doesn't clear when you turn it off. So you can just pop the RAM out, freeze it with an upside down can of dust off, and then you can plug it into another computer and get a memory read off of it. So I'm like, all right, this is just way beyond me. I definitely have a lot of things I need to learn here. So yeah, security groups, local security conferences, larger security conferences like DEF CON, highly, highly, highly recommend.
So I'm a big proponent of sort of the idea of just starting, right? Especially for people who don't have any exposure to the industry. And I think you just described it really, really well. And one of the other things you touched on at the very beginning of your talk was around the subject of networking and how you overcame your own personal obstacles in order to become a better networker. Talk a little bit more about what networking means in the totality of your professional career and how groups like this one and others potentially help aid and build out that network and how essential it is to you.
Yeah, another good question. I can't possibly overstate the usefulness of networking with people, just talking to people, understanding like what they're dealing with in their career, and even networking with yourselves, right? Say I'm brand new to the industry, maybe I'm still in college. I would want to work and talk to other people in college that are interested in cybersecurity so that we can kind of help push and encourage each other as we're pursuing this goal of hopping into the industry. Many of my jobs I actually got from networking. I didn't get them from online job applications. I'm not knocking online job applications. It's just, it means so much more when somebody can put a face to the name. It means so much more when we see somebody come out and say, hey, look, I want to work for you. This is something I'm interested in. Here are all the things that I'm doing. Networking is a great opportunity to not only see what's out there, but also be seen by other people. The one that I keep coming back to is you think about some of these YouTubers, right, where they have these massive audiences, and it's not that they're usually an expert in anything in particular. It's just that exposure of reaching out and being seen by other people. So if I had to start over, and this is something that I talk to my interns about, is definitely network, like go to events and talk to people, network with them, especially for more of the technically minded. We tend to be introverts, a little quiet. That book, Networking for People Who Hate Networking, again, why I brought it up, there's a lot of great techniques for that. You know how a normal interaction is going to go. And so you have the opportunity to write those down, right? Treat them as writing prompts. So how many times has somebody asked like, oh, so tell me what you do, or what are you interested in, or what are your skills? And so self-promotion is usually one of the hardest parts, but if you actually take the time, sit down, kind of write out how you would answer a question like that. You can even do some research on what some common answers are. It really goes a long way when you can confidently stand up and say, oh, I am this, I do this. Here are the things that I'm really looking for. And here's kind of where I want to be in the next like 3 to 5 years. So cannot overstate the power of networking enough.
Awesome. So a component of your last answer has me thinking about, the issue of personal branding. We were actually in a conversation before we got on around, taking an affirmative approach around your own brand and like how it is that you present yourself. So I think that your last comments around the confidence that you need to display and coming up with, answers that you can take from one format to the next that will help you explain your positioning and potential thought leadership on these issues. So good stuff. Hey, I see Hakeem put in a question around dealing with aggressive or challenging clients. I'm sure you've had lots of experience, it seems like, in the security consulting realm. The story that you gave about taking down the internet, that was super interesting, super interesting as well. What about just dealing with challenging or aggressive clients? What's your posture there when someone's just kind of like in your face and you're trying to help them?
Yeah, so that one is going to take a while to answer, but in my time of consulting, that was something that I used to struggle with a lot. But something that kind of held me back is we have this mindset of, oh, the customer's always right, or the client's always right, where there is some truth to that. It's not cut and dry. So oftentimes when somebody's yelling at me, what I hear, or if somebody's upset or frustrated, what I hear is somebody who cares, somebody who's passionate. And so they're more or less like talking very loudly. So what I try to do is really sit down, listen, and it's active listening. So I'll kind of repeat or rephrase what they're saying, like, hey, so I'm hearing that you're having issues with this, this, and this. That first step, what that does is kind of reinforce and show that you are listening, you are trying to understand their position, so they feel heard. And then from there, really kind of dialing down into what are you upset about, what are the concerns, what's going on, and then what are the things that we can do to kind of alleviate some of those concerns, or kind of work with you on that. And so there are cases, I'm not going to lie, there are cases where there's really not a lot that you can do. There are cases where something has happened and a client comes up to you. I had a client that was very, very mad at me. It was something that wasn't necessarily my fault. It was something with their environment. We didn't find out until I started kind of hopping in and clearing out the dust that there was some huge issues with their environment. But because of some miscommunications, they hopped myself, my manager, my project manager, a large number of my team, a large number of their team into a conference call. And I have watched enough Quentin Tarantino movies to be prepared for the F-bombs that were happening in that hour-long just tirade. It was a lot, but again, you are never alone. Sync internally with your team to understand, diagnose the issue, what happened, so that you can come up with a clear response. And then in the middle of it, just, again, this is somebody who's passionate, somebody who cares. It's really easy to get defensive. Try to resist that. You're going to feel it. You're human. It's normal. But try to resist that temptation to kind of ball up and get defensive, or try and clap back at them. Instead, just kind of hear them out. Take the tongue lashings, honestly, and then at the end of it, reach out to some people internally on your team. So after that particular client, I actually had a number of people call me, just kind of saying, hey, listen, like what you did, everything was fine, but I just want to make sure you're okay, because that was a lot and it was pretty heavy. So how are you doing? How are things going? Again, you're never alone. So rely on your team, trust your team, and reach out to people if you see that happening to them.
Be someone that provides solutions and be a problem solver. Awesome.
Mhm.
Hey, is there anyone else on the line, guest included, who would like to jump in and ask a question of Gavin while we have him? Fascinating background and story. And I think I'm going to be tapping into Gavin for some other stuff I have going on to.
So
Gavin
I have a
present.
question, Gavin.
Yeah, absolutely.
Jamal. So what do you recommend for somebody that wants to go in pen testing? Certifications or platforms like Try Hack Me and Hack the Box?
Yeah, Jamal, that's a great question. The first thing that I'm going to say is there's a newbie trap that I see a lot of people fall into. Now, today, there are so many resources out there to learn from, right? You have Pen Tester Academy, you have OSCP, you have Try Hack Me, you have Hack the Box. One of the biggest challenges I see is people getting overloaded. So my first recommendation is whatever you're trying to learn, pick no more than 2 or 3 resources. Stick with those resources until you finish them. If one of them turns out not to be that great, throw it away. Don't replace it. You still have 1 or 2 left. Stick with those resources. And then once you're done with that, you'll be more informed on where to go from there. So overall, if I want somebody to hop into pen testing, and this is something that I give to my interns, for application security assessments, right? You're doing web application pen testing. I think that Hack the Box is all right. Hack the Box, it's more of like a holistic kind of internal network pen testing. Not a lot of it translates into web applications. I actually like Pen Tester Labs. Pen Tester Labs is a really good, solid one. Another one is take a look at OWASP Juice Shop and OWASP also has another one called, oh, sorry, it's not OWASP. It's actually DVWA, so Damn Vulnerable Web Application. So if you think about like a video game or an RPG, usually there's a section where you go to the gym and you get to drill certain things. So you work on your speed, you work on your constitution, you work on your attack, and then you have your adventure mode. So treat DVWA or BWAP, some of those that really focus on single scenarios. There's also Portswigger Labs. Again, just pick one or two of those. Focus on specific scenarios. So you learn SQL injection, you learn cross-site scripting, you learn authorization controls, parameter tampering, local file inclusion, and then go to a website like OWASP Juice Shop, and then practice some of those things in a realistic looking application. Because at the end of the day, what we have to do as part of our applications assessments is go from start to finish. So here's a brand new web application, go. So, I know how to exploit the SQL injection. Great. How do you find it? I don't know. That's why you want to practice on real world applications like that. There's also bug bounty programs. There are some good like student applications that you can find on SourceForge. There's a lot of places you can go, but right now I would recommend Portswigger Labs or DVWA as your dojo, and then Juice Shop as kind of your adventure mode. The same goes for any other service. So you look at like networking. So you want to do network pen testing. Hack the Box is great. OSCP is great. They kind of get your feet wet and started into how to actually evaluate entire networks and how to exploit vulnerable services on those networks. Yeah, it's just the biggest thing that I can tell you is stick to probably 2 or 3 resources at a time, and then complete those. By the time you're done with them, you'll have a better idea of where to go from there.
Thanks,
I think we
man.
got time for, thanks Jamal and Gavin, great answer. I think we got time for one more question. I see one in the queue. Jay, do you want to come off mute to ask your question?
Yeah, I can do that. I was pretty much just asking about like recommended training for like machine learning and artificial intelligence for cybersecurity, since it'd be the future and booming, and not too many are combining those two disciplines.
Yeah. So there's a really good book called Machine Learning and Security. It's by Clarence Chio. I actually got to meet him at one of the DEF CON events, and it's fantastic. It takes you kind of start to finish how to apply machine learning. Like, what is machine learning, first of all? And then how do you apply that into machine learning and security? Like, what are some security things that you can do with machine learning? There's also the AI Village. They also present at DEF CON. I've presented as part of DEF CON China with the Village before, but they have a really good kind of beginner workshop. Kaggle is also a good place to start. One of the things that I would say where you really want to begin is try and learn how spam filters are made using machine learning. So a lot of them will use like multinomial naive Bayesian or some form of logistic regression. And so you'll understand the components of the machine learning part, and then you'll understand like, what are you trying to do with a spam filter? You're already aware of how a spam filter works. So you just kind of translate that into other security type services. So whether that's malware detection or malicious URL detection, like domain generation algorithms, which we see with a lot of botnets. So those are the resources that I would point you to.
Awesome. Gavin, I want to thank you again on behalf of the Cyversity leadership team here for the Bay Area chapter. This was one of the most informative lectures that we've had to date, and we appreciate your time and your expertise bringing that to the table. How can folks reach out to you if they want to connect with you?
Yeah, it's going to be my LinkedIn. Here I have a tiny URL, BF Gavin. The actual LinkedIn is, I think it's linkedin.com/in/ and then it's my first initial last name and the number 0. So it's GSTROY 0. And so that's going to be the easiest way to get a hold of me. So we can continue that conversation.
Awesome. Gavin Stroy from BishopFox, thank you again. If you'll relinquish the screen.
Yeah, absolutely. There you go.
Awesome. Thanks, Gavin. And all right, we are back on here. Let's
All
bring
right.
Olivia to the stage.
Yeah. Olivia, are you there?
Yes, I am.
All righty, I want to introduce the next one of our leaders who's going to talk to you a little bit about some of our educational updates that we want to make sure that you're aware of.
Great. Thanks, Yolanda. I'm Olivia Hereford, and I work in tech career education and workforce development for the Bay Area Community College Consortium, which represents the 28 community colleges in the San Francisco Monterey Bay Area. And one of the things that I want to make sure people understand about community colleges is that when I talk about career education, there are two focuses that community colleges have. And that is obviously the transfer track into four-year schools. But for a long time, the focus has been on career technical education. And another little known fact about community colleges and cybersecurity is that community colleges for a long time, maybe since the mid 2000s, were the only place where you could go and get training and education in cybersecurity. It hasn't been until like the last 5 to 10 years that four-year schools have really got into this space. And still, most of them are only offering cybersecurity degrees at the master level. Private institutions have been doing it for a while, but in the public sector education, it's been the community colleges. In fact, if I noted in Gavin's presentation that he was speaking at Rio Salado College, which is a community college. And so again, I want to bring attention to that because there's a lot of opportunities to if you're new, to begin to develop those skills, or if you're a skill builder wanting to learn more about cybersecurity and get into the field, the community colleges offer a lot of opportunities to do that. Here I've listed the colleges in the Bay Area that offer certificates of achievement or AS degrees. And I'd like to note the asterisk colleges. Those colleges have been recognized by the NSA and DHS as centers of academic excellence for cyber defense. And they have to go through a lot of stringent look at their curriculum to get that designation. And these two colleges, I believe there are only 5 community colleges in California that had that designation. And we have 2 of them here in the Bay Area, Ohlone and City College of San Francisco. The local CSU, San Jose State, offers a bachelor's degree in information security. And another thing I want to point out is that if you're a skill builder, as I think also as Gavin and MK were mentioning, go out and focus on a couple of areas where you'd like to take classes and get to know really the direction you really want to take. And then maybe you want to go to certifications. And by the way, most of our cybersecurity programs and certificates and courses are all focused on preparing the students to sit for industry certifications. So that is another way in which you can get prepared for going out and getting those certifications. Some of our best skill builder programs are at City College of San Francisco and Merritt. City College has an incredible list of advanced electives in which you can build, if you're building them on a certificate or an AS degree, or if you just wanted to build upon skills you already have. And some very noted professors, one of them being Sam Bone at City College of San Francisco, very highly regarded and develops a lot of those courses. So if you'd like to get more details about these courses and these programs, the BACC, for which I work, has a website called bayict.org. And you can go there and get more details about some of the offerings and how you can pursue building up on your career and getting into cybersecurity.
Thank you so much for that, Olivia. I think that's another big one that we always have to remind individuals is that this doesn't have to be overly expensive. It's these offerings are available to you. We're bringing you these sessions on a regular basis so that you can continue to build on the benefits that you get as a member of Cyversity. If you have not signed up to become a member, please do so. You'll have the opportunity to not only explore and find out these various roles that are available across the industry, you'll be able to access and go in and see what your skill level is and what you need to do to continue to uplift those skills that you need to continue to develop further. We have mentoring and content that you can access there. The other thing I want to remind you of is this is the Bay Area. So if you're coming in from one of the other chapters, welcome and thank you. But if you know of someone who's in some of these other areas, these other metropolitan cities, please encourage them to join Cyversity as well and start to participate. And these other chapters also offer different events throughout the month. Thank you so much. We really appreciate you coming. This was our October Cybersecurity Awareness Month session. Thank you again to Gavin Stroy. You just gave us so much knowledge and information that I think every single person left here with, I mean, at least a page of notes. Appreciate you so much. If you make sure that you acknowledge or find Cyversity on Twitter, LinkedIn, and Facebook, and reach out to those social networks. Lastly, we want to make sure that we're calling out our sponsors. Our sponsors have been so instrumental in being able to help us to bring this content and all of the different skill sessions and educational offerings to you. So we want to give a shout out to CrowdStrike, BishopFox, and Palo Alto Networks for their support in this area. Thank you so much. If you need anything, feel free to make sure you connect with any of the leaders here from the Bay Area chapter, and have a wonderful day.